on frozen Northeast waterways and the Great Lakes. Even larger polar icebreakers patrol the Arctic and Antarctica, where they are able to slice through up to 21 feet of ice. These vessels are in high demand as warming temperatures and melting ice open new Arctic trade routes, saving shippers both time and money. They are also vital for national security.
Icebreakers are essential to the United States because of the Arctic Circle. As the ice continues to melt, what we have is a passage from Asia to the east coast of the United States that is the most quickest and most direct route. And who controls this Northwest Passage is going to be essential in the future.
But the U.S. polar icebreaker fleet has fallen behind. The U.S. only has 3 polar icebreakers, including one nearly 2 decades past her designed life. Russia, by comparison, has more than 40, 8 of which are nuclear-powered. China has at least 4, with more on the way.
Our country is tremendously short on icebreaking capacity.
In an effort to revitalize the fleet in 2025, President Trump announced plans for 11 new polar icebreakers to bolster Arctic security. 4 ships would be built in Finland, 7 in the U.S. Delivery of the first ship is expected in 2028.
We only have one icebreaker in all of that millions and millions of acres. We only have one icebreaker.
These Arctic security cutters that the Coast Guard's building provide the sovereignty and sort of the freedom of navigation capability and capacity in that region that we currently do not have. And so if you're not there, you can't exert presence, you can't look out for the interests of the United States.
So what will melting Arctic sea ice mean for commercial shippers and national security? And how does the U.S. plan to revive its dormant icebreaker shipbuilding industry?
Coast Guard Cutter Sycamore from the Sturgeon Bay, CG 111. Good morning.
On a cold February morning at this dock in New York's Hudson Valley, the Coast Guard's 140-foot Sturgeon Bay icebreaker launches at dawn.
Bingo!
On top of its polar icebreakers, the U.S. Coast Guard operates 21 domestic icebreakers as well as another 11 ships that have ice-breaking capabilities. These vessels are less complex than what is needed for polar missions.
We actually don't cut through the ice in a straight line. It's a little bit more of like a Pac-Man style.
We are at the peak of what the Coast Guard calls the ice season. This vessel has been out since early January and will run through March to ensure that commerce will be flowing on the Hudson River.
Today's assignment cut a path for cargo ships transiting the frozen waterway and rescue vessels stuck in ice. This winter, parts of the U.S. experienced unusually low temperatures and lots of ice, making river transits particularly hazardous.
This season is significantly worse in terms of the ice conditions. We're doing more direct assists, freeing vessels that are beset in ice in just a few days than we did the entirety of last season.
It's our responsibility to keep the traffic flowing. And while that's important is that, even if only one vessel's having trouble, if they have trouble in the wrong spot, they can jam up the whole river.
And that cargo is vital. The primary good transiting is home heating oil. The northeastern U.S. consumes 85% of the country's heating oil. 90% of that oil is delivered on a U.S. Coast Guard maintained waterway.
We're approaching a fuel terminal that is currently iced over. We need to break that ice to allow the barge to actually connect to the fuel terminal.
With a crew of less than 20, the Sturgeon Bay covers about 70 to 100 miles daily.
The most difficult part is when you're doing those direct assists. It's going to be when we're ripping 10 knots, 20 yards off the hull of an oil barge.
We're getting just a few yards off of another vessel going at high speed and high power.
But like its polar fleet, the Coast Guard's domestic fleet is aging. More than half of the agency's 21 domestic icebreakers were commissioned in the 1960s, including 2 from 1961.
Without the Sturgeon Bay and other ice-breaking assets, it is possible that those deliveries would not occur.
And the Coast Guard's mission doesn't stop at the U.S. border.
The U.S. Coast Guard's mission in ensuring the fluidity of trade expands beyond the rivers and the waterways across the United States. It also expands to the polar regions.
8 countries sit on the edge of the Arctic, an area about 5.5 million square miles, or more than 1.5 times the size of the continental U.S. With Arctic sea ice decreasing about 38,000 square miles annually, the once remote and impenetrable region is now seeing an uptick in vessel traffic. More than 1,800 ships entered the Arctic polar area in 2025, a 40% increase from 2013. Those ships traveled 11.9 million nautical miles, a 95% increase during the same period. Crude oil tanker transits increased 396% during that period, while bulk carrier transits increased 156%. Shorter distances mean less travel time, lower fuel consumption, and lower costs for shippers. There are also serious national security implications.
From an infrastructure and from a military power and influence perspective, it is vital that the U.S. has the capacity to operate in these regions.
The Northwest Passage and the Northeast Passage are the 2 main routes. The Northwest Passage connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Canadian Arctic.
Just in terms of the importance of that Northwest Passage and the opening of that sea route, sort of north of Canada, coming from the Arctic Ocean over to the North Atlantic, it saves about 4,500 nautical miles in transit time from one side of the United States to the other.
The more popular Northeast Passage connects Europe and Asia along the northern shores of Russia. That trip is 1/3 of the distance of the traditional route through the Suez Canal. Melting ice could soon provide other benefits too. The Arctic holds an estimated $1 trillion in minerals, 30% of the world's undiscovered gas reserves, and 13% of its undiscovered oil reserves.
Maybe 30% of the unused resources of the globe are in the Arctic region.
One of the things that people don't often realize is the competition for fishery resources around the globe continues to increase, and it's an important part of our own economic prosperity to ensure responsible fisheries management in that area.
That has a number of countries scrambling for polar icebreakers. China, a near-Arctic nation, has seen an unprecedented number of military and research vessels operating in or near the U.S. Arctic waters in 2025.
The investment into icebreakers is going to be essential on who controls the North Sea Passage and also for Arctic and Arctic security.
We see a lot of developments in many nations with an interest to go and operate and be present in the Arctic. And when you want to be present in the Arctic, you need to have icebreakers.
The Coast Guard is a branch of the U.S. military whose role includes maintaining military readiness at the poles, enforcing treaties, facilitating the movement of goods, and providing support for vessels, ports, waterways, and coastal security. To accomplish its polar mission in Antarctica and the Arctic, it has just 3 icebreakers. The Storis, a 360-foot-long, medium-sized icebreaker, entered service in 2025. It is the first polar icebreaker added to the Coast Guard's fleet in over 2 decades. The Healy, the Coast Guard's largest icebreaker, was commissioned in 1999. In recent years, it has been hit with electrical fires and mechanical issues.
The reason that we have fallen so far behind in the race to the Arctic or for the icebreakers is basically funding. The United States Coast Guard operates our polar icebreakers. They've been plagued by problems. They've been plagued by maintenance issues. They've been plagued by trying to get proper supplies.
The 50-year-old Polar Star recently completed its mission to Antarctica. Its job there, help resupply vessels reach the American Antarctic Research Station, which houses about 1,000 people. Cutting a channel to McMurdo Station in about 5 to 8 feet of ice can feel like an earthquake, according to the ship's commanding officer.
When the ice is lesser, that might last 1 or 2 days to get that initial channel cut. Some years when the ice is 30, 40 miles long, it can be weeks on end, day and night, breaking that ice. You can imagine no one gets a lot of sleep.
To rejuvenate the Coast Guard's polar fleet in 2025, Congress allocated $8.6 billion to build 11 new icebreakers. Finland's Ruma Marine Constructions will build 2 of the ships. Bollinger Shipyards in Louisiana will construct 4, and shipbuilder Davy will build 2 Arctic security cutters at its facility in Helsinki, and another 3 at its shipyard in Texas. According to the company, it will take about 2 years to build the first icebreaker at the Helsinki shipyard as it ramps up production in Texas.
Our plan is to invest over $700 million, maybe up to $1 billion between our 2 sites here in Texas. A lot of that investment will go toward upgrading the facilities, upgrading the physical infrastructures.
50% of all the world's icebreakers has been built in Helsinki shipyard in Finland. The ships what we are sending up into the Arctic, they need to be operational themselves, and the kind of endurance for the ships needs to be 60 to 90 days. They are long missions. You don't have fuel supply, you don't have food supply, you don't have any external supplies available.
Another challenge, the U.S. hasn't constructed a heavy icebreaker in 50 years.
The workforce, the core of the workforce, the foundations are here. The infrastructure itself is a bit tired, a bit worn down.
To train its shipbuilders, Davy plans to send some workers in Texas to Finland to learn alongside colleagues there.
And likewise, when we get to building ships here in the U.S., we will ask our Helsinki employees to come to Texas to help.
That cooperation could be key if the U.S. hopes to beef up its Arctic presence. According to one analysis, most of the Arctic Ocean could become ice-free during the summer months by the year 2050.
It's going to get worse before it gets better, because once some of this fast ice breaks loose, it's going to become a big mess. And the icebreakers are going to really have to go to work then to keep commerce flowing.